anyway, I am Teresa Boggs, and I'm a speech language pathologist. I've been with ETSU for, I think I just had my 25-year pin. But until this past year, I've been the clinic director for the Department of Speech Language Pathology, kind of running our pediatric clinics that are at the NAVE Center. And so I've always been, my time at ETSU has been in the community because we serve families and children with communication disorders. So when I moved into the classroom and I was reading this, I think it came via email. I was like, oh, yes, I thought we were doing that anyway. And so this was a good opportunity for me to continue that clinical piece into the classroom. So I'll briefly share this. And hopefully this is kind of what you want. But the goal of this community engaged learning activity was to have our speech language pathology graduate students and our community SLP kind of working together to develop a symposium in which our graduate students would share information with those in the community that they are working with. So our students, as part of their graduate program, complete clinical practicums, just like many of your students do. And they are often assigned to work with speech language pathologists that are in the community. And so I wanted there to be an opportunity for them to learn from each other, but in a classroom environment, as opposed to in a specific clinic. So the purpose was to kind of integrate the theoretical knowledge and application through tasking the graduate students in developing this symposium. It was anticipated that by doing this, they would provide community SLP with more information about evidence-based intervention for autism, which is constantly changing. And so if a speech language pathologist has been out in the community for a while, they may not have the most current information. And so this was an opportunity to fill that gap. The students were initially tasked with an assignment to develop this symposium, and I'll kind of talk about how we did that. So we had this initial phase. So as the faculty, I provided just the general content information they needed about assessment and intervention. And then we began to invite community SLP to come into the classroom as a guest lecturer for the specific purpose of having them share what they already know about intervention for ASD and to give our students an opportunity to have discussions with them. And so we used a collaborative approach where they would present for a bit and then we would come together in small groups and the students would ask great questions. The community SLP would give great information. And our goal was to find out what they needed. I thought I knew what they needed because I'd had that experience with them, but kind of watching the students discover that was a nice part. So this kind of collaboration in this initial phase served as the content for the symposium. And so this is just a couple of community SLP who came to the classroom. Both were alumni, so that was fun as well. And then the students really enjoyed that. And then the second phase was after the community SLP presented, we decided that what their intervention, what they would be tasked to do. So the students were put into pairs, so they teamed up. And in the classroom, one student was working in the schools in their practicum and another student was not. So someone within the team had access to their supervisor throughout the course of developing the topic. So that was a nice addition. What we decided was the area that we needed to do the symposium on was specifically evidence-based intervention. That there were some interventions that were happening, but they were fairly narrow. There weren't a lot of different kinds of intervention. And the comments that the supervisors would say was, oh yeah, I'd like to know about, or I heard about, and really helping the students in the class tie in what they already knew well what they needed and then looking at what the evidence was behind that. So we divided into groups. They chose an intervention. We ended up having about 10 interventions, and their task then was based upon what they already knew about the community, based on what they knew about the needs, based on the feedback. They would develop this format to share in the symposium. So this is just a few students as they prepared to educate. They had to, had to be visually appealing. There had to be an aspect that could be hands-on. Most of them, if you've had the opportunity to work with graduate students, I mean, they will excel and they will exceed your expectations. So many of them had like QR codes where the participants could come in and scan and get additional information. Some of them created handouts. Some of them did like, the little bulletin boards. And so they did a phenomenal job. So that was the second phase. And then I think the final phase was kind of the cumulative event. So we ended up opening up the workshop not only to the SLPs that were being mentored by our students, but all the SLPs in the community. And we had 30 community SLPs come, which was phenomenal. There were probably of those 30, 15 of them had a student at that time. The others likely had students in the past, but some were even community SLPs who were not pediatric focused. They worked in the hospital or they worked with a different population. The students also developed, the flyer to get the information out and had to do some of the marketing. So they put a lot of work into this. But it was led and designed by about 25 students. When we started out, we did like a 30-minute opening where different students talked about what evidence-based practice is, what evidence-based intervention is, why we want to do it. So they set the stage. And then after that, the participants kind of independently roamed through the different sessions. So almost as if they were going to, conference somewhere. And the students were kind of stationed in different places. And I really feel like kind of the heart of the symposium was in this student-led presentation at their station, that they really did shine. And they knew what they were talking about. I wish I had taken more pictures, and I didn't. But this is one hallway with the students engaging with the community, and we had 2 hallways set up, and it was a 2-hour event. So a 30-minute opening, an hour and a half of them kind of staying and talking, and people stayed until the end, which was really nice. And they moved from one represented intervention to another. And so at the end, not only did I complete the rubric for the CEU event, but I had the students do a reflection. And some things that these things that come up was how they prepared. And so I think that the graduate students in the reflections talked a lot about having conversations with the presenters, with the SLP in the community, having conversations with their partner, how they researched it. I like this. They wrote, engaging with the real world challenges presented by the community SLP gave me a better understanding of the communication interventions for children with autism. I think when they get it in the textbook, they're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then someone in the community will go, well, I tried that, and this is what happened, and they have some horror story, But so I think the students gave a lot of, they seemed to take very seriously the written reflection. It was required for the class, but what they submitted was very thoughtful. They talked about the personal impact and said things like different viewpoints allow my team to learn from each other. They focused on meaningful aspects and condensed them. It combined their academic knowledge to their clinical practice. That's the one we really want. And they were better prepared and more confident. And then the community impact, they talked about the community SLP their questions made them more curious, and they wanted to find out more information, which was another like, oh, yay. And so many of them said, oh, you should do this again for your future classes. So they really seen that as valuable. We did a little exit, survey with our participants, and we didn't get them until after they had left. So we didn't get one from everyone, but about 21 of them. And here were a few questions, how satisfied were you? But I liked, this one, like, did the graduate students effectively communicate key concepts? 90% and 10%, I think, there was like somewhat effectively, not effectively, a little, scale. And then how likely are they apply the knowledge to their clinical practice? And so 72% were likely, very likely, 24 likely. And then one who revealed neutral wrote on the side, I don't have any children with autism on my caseload, so they couldn't apply that. So I kind of, as a final thought, kind of through this collaborative learning with community SLPs, our student-led presentations, the guided discussions, the reflective learning, this CEL event not only elevated the confidence and knowledge of the graduate students, but I believe left a lasting impression on our community participants, who in our program, we significantly not only value them, but we need them because they allow our students to kind of finish up their training. So yeah, that was it. Thank you.